A daily dose of practical wit and wisdom with a professional educator and trainer, Amazon best-selling author, United States Marine, television and radio host, Paul G. Markle. Each episode will focus on positive and productive ways to strengthen your mindset and help you improve your relationships, career goals, and overall well-being. Please welcome your host, Paul G. Markle.
Hello and welcome back. It is time for another Morning Mindset podcast. I am still your host, Paul Markle, in case you were wondering. And if this is your first one, if someone recommended this to you and said, hey, you need to listen to this guy and listen to this topic today, congratulations. And I'm glad that you're here. I'm betting that many people in the office work environment will come across this and they're like, yeah, tell me about it. Today's topic, productive meetings, ? Productive meetings? Like Ron Burgundy there? That's right. Why did I put a question mark behind it? You're like, well, Paul, meetings are all about productivity, and that's how we have and develop productivity is through meetings, right? I'm in my 5th decade here on planet Earth, and I have been to, I think safely, over the last 30 plus years, literally thousands of meetings. And we had what were called formations in the Marine Corps. In the Marine Corps, you had daily formation. Now you're like, what formation? That's where everybody stands there and listens to the first sergeant or the XO or the gunnery sergeant or whoever. They listen to them talk. They have a clipboard and they go over the topics of the day. And then at the very end, they open it up for questions and so on and so forth. Then in the, obviously the working civilian world, I've been to innumerable meetings. And I will say this. I'm guessing that the majority of you out there who've been in the professional work world for any length of time have come across the meeting that is, you're sitting there and you're thinking, okay, this meeting is just a meeting because we had to have a meeting. Or do you have meetings to schedule meetings? We need to have a meeting. Everybody needs to go to the conference room. We need to have a meeting. Weekly meeting, morning meeting, afternoon meeting, whatever. Many of them, these gatherings of individuals, rather than being productive, end up being monumental time wasters. Have you ever gone to a required meeting? I'm not talking about voluntary. I'm talking about it was required for your job. You had to be there. You had to sit quietly and listen to someone drone on about a topic of which you had either had no interest or already knew everything about, but you listened to that person drone on about that again and again. And you leave thinking, wow, thanks for wasting my time. Thank you very much for wasting my day. I could have been doing something productive myself, but instead I was sitting in a conference room listening to you go over all of the stuff that we all already knew. Yes. So do I still have meetings? Yes, I still do have meetings. So how can we, and it doesn't matter what your profession is or what you're doing, how can we have positive and productive meetings that are not time wasters? Now, I understand if you're low on the totem pole, or if you're a worker bee or you're what have you, you may not have any input into how or when the meetings are scheduled, how often they happen, what goes on during them. You just have to be there and you just have to sit and listen and maybe interject once in a while. But if you are one of the people who has some say in the meeting and when it happens and what is discussed and how long it takes and so forth, step number 1, before you schedule a meeting, before you just knee-jerk react and have everyone stop what they're doing and all gather in the conference room, or you're like, wow, conference room, you're an old guy. We don't conference room anything anymore. We have go-to-meeting apps All right. Here's the thing. A GoToMeeting app where everybody turns on the cameras on their laptops, or everybody turns on the cameras on their phones or their iPads or whatever, and everyone sits there, and you're in Chicago and New York and LA and Atlanta, and we're all having a meeting at the same time. Isn't that wonderful? And isn't technology great? It's still a meeting. It still is. After your very first teleconference meeting, after the first one, when you're all excited because it was super cool because you were using the internet to do it, after that newness wears off, it's still just a meeting. So if you are in charge or have any say in it, step number 1, before you schedule a meeting, ask yourself, is this something that we actually all have to be present at the same time in order to do? Do we really have to have it? Is it a requirement? Well, what do you mean? I mean, we'd have a meeting because that's how you're productive. You're productive in meetings. No. Is this something that could be done via memorandum? Is this something that could be done via email? Do we have to have this meeting? And if your answer is yes, we do, before you have the meeting, have a real legitimate agenda. All right, during this meeting, we need to discuss these topics. Boom, 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 boom. Have an idea how long you want it to be. You don't just want to have an open-ended, well, it's just going to go until it ends. And 15 minutes, half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, I don't know. We're just going to go and go and go. No, don't do that. Do not waste people's time. If you can help it, don't waste their time. Is it going to be an information only, or are you going to be seeking feedback? Because if it's in information only and you don't want the participation of anyone else, you probably don't need to have a meeting to do that. If it's not going to have two-way communication, if it's one-way communication, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen, and that's it. You may not need to have a meeting. Now, keep in mind that if you're having one of these, you need to have some type of structure and order. You cannot let people go off on story hour, what I call story hour or story time. If you allow them, people will take the meeting off track by telling personal stories. We don't need that. We don't want that. You need to nip that in the bud. Because as interesting as that story is, you can tell that story later on your own time. You don't need to be rude about it, but you need to have certain phrases like, let's stay on topic. I think everyone understands. Let's move on to the next topic. We have a limited amount of time. Let's make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak, what have you. All those things are, telling people to shut up without actually telling them to shut up. So when you're going to have a meeting, number one, do we need to have this? Or are we just having it out of habit? Are we just having a meeting because that's what you do? All right. And if you're just doing it because that's what you do, you're wasting people's time. Don't do it. If you decide that you're going to have a meeting, have the agenda ready and prepared, know what you're going to say and the questions you're going to ask. Have a time limit in mind. I'm not telling you that, every meeting has to be exactly 10 minutes or exactly 14 minutes or exactly 30 minutes or whatever, but you should have an idea. Say, look at what you have to say and realize that, okay, all of this material here, we've got 3 items on the agenda, spend 5 minutes on each, no more than 15 minutes, moving on with our lives. Do not deliberately waste people's time. Ensure that everyone understands. Take the opportunity to make sure that everyone has clarity and understands why you did what you did and what you were talking about. Because there's no point in having a meeting if you're going to close the meeting, leave, and 25% of the people there have no idea what they're supposed to do with that information that they just got. Make sure that you check for clarity. Now, a lot of professional people say, hey, start every meeting with a joke. Start every speech with a joke, livens people up. That's you can do that if you want. And But what I find is when you do that, when you put that pressure on yourself, you put pressure on yourself to come up with a joke, and then you don't, or and it doesn't really matter if it's funny or not. But if your people respect you, you shouldn't need to trick them into having meetings. And the more productive, short, concise, to the point meetings you have, the less likely people will be to want to avoid them. So don't get in the habit, or, get in the habit of having productive meetings and avoid the habit of monumental time wasters. And I'm not going to waste any more of your time because I see the clock on the wall says I've been talking for a little bit more than 10 minutes. So that's it for today's Morning Mindset. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you share this with other people. I am your host, Paul Markle, and I will talk to you again real soon.
Thank you for spending time with us today. To get show notes, submit a topic request, and for more from your host, Paul G. Markle, visit morningmindsetpodcast.com. That's morningmindsetpodcast.com. Please leave a review for this podcast on your favorite podcast player. We appreciate your time and effort, and we look forward to reading your honest feedback.